In today's episode, I'll be discussing recent events that highlight how President Trump not only doesn't care about Puerto Rico's development and ultimate recovery, he actively opposes it. My name is Andrew Mercado Vasquez, and welcome to PRF Review, the show based on the podcast Puerto Rico Forward, which you can actually listen to on Patreon, Google Play, iTunes, and other platforms. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, what we're going to be talking about is recent events that have highlighted how it is that the Trump administration has become an obstacle in Puerto Rico's development. Now, the first article we're going to be discussing comes from the Washington Post. It was published on January 16th, and it was written by Tracy Jan, Arelis Hernandez, Josh Dossi, and Damian Paleta. Now, the title is the following: After butting heads with Trump administration, top HUD official departs agency. Now, you read that title and you think this has nothing to do with Puerto Rico, but it does. Now, who is this top HUD official? Well, it's actually none other than Deputy Secretary Pam Pettinod. She was second in command at the agency, led by Ben Carson, and was widely regarded as that agency's most capable political leader. This is a person that has knowledge about her agency, knows how this agency works, and can speak with authority about it. Later down the article, they talk about different instances that actually led this person to depart the administration. But in particular to the Puerto Rico issue, they talk about the following, and I'm going to quote. Last fall, Pettinod expressed concern over the Trump administration's intervention in disaster recovery money that Congress had appropriated for Puerto Rico and states hit by hurricanes. End of quote. Now, what was this concern from Trump's part? The article talks about that as well. I'm going to quote. Trump told then White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and then Office of Management and Budget Director Mick Mulvaney, that he did not want a single dollar going to Puerto Rico because he thought the island was misusing the money and taking advantage of the government, according to a person with direct knowledge of the discussions who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe sensitive internal deliberations. Instead, he wanted more of the money to go to Texas and Florida, the person said, and he being, of course, Donald Trump. Now, essentially what this all means is that Donald Trump was worried. What was he worried about? That when the money that Congress had appropriated for Puerto Rico would arrive to Puerto Rico, that government officials and other people apparently would misuse it. Now, okay, you could say that concern is valid. Maybe. But it becomes baseless once we consider the following, and I'm going to quote again from the article. Pettinod told White House budget officials during an early December meeting in the Situation Room that the money had been appropriated by Congress and must be sent, according to two people with direct knowledge of the meeting. She assured them that HUD had proper oversight of the funds. End of quote. That's why it becomes baseless. That's why it can't be just a concern from President Trump, because you have a HUD official, second in command, not just anybody, telling you that this agency is able to completely oversee and make sure that the money is used correctly. You don't even have to trust the people that are going to receive the money anymore, because your own administration is going to be able to oversee it. So it becomes baseless. It becomes empty. Seems to be just a facade that's constructed because of other motivations. Now, what would these other motivations be? Well, that question is addressed in a Vox article that was actually published the next day, January 17th, and it's written by Matthew Iglesias with a Y. Now, this article is properly titled. It's the following: Trump tried to illegally withhold disaster relief money from Puerto Rico. That's the right way of describing this particular situation. Now, the article basically talks about the Washington Post article and provides the same general information, but towards the end, the author does some reflecting, and I think this type of thought is very important to highlight. And I'm going to quote from the article directly. Trump has never in any way conveyed an interest in promoting recovery in Puerto Rico. What we learned Thursday is that he's actually done the opposite. He demonstrated a personal desire grounded in ignorance or racism or both, in making sure that help did not arrive on the island. That's a catastrophe for the people directly affected, who are U.S. citizens, but also an incredibly scary precedent for the rest of us. The same congressional Republicans who managed to hold dozens of hearings on Benghazi never made an effort to find out what actually went wrong with the Hurricane Maria response, or why. End of quote. So what exactly are we looking at here in this first example? What we're looking at is a president that sees Congress acting in a way favorable to Puerto Rico and actively stands in its way. And let's not forget the history that this administration has and the way that it behaves towards certain segments of society. This author seems to feed from that when he highlights the possibility that the president and this administration is behaving not from a place of general concern, but rather from a place of bigotry, a place of ignorance, a place of racism, or both. Now, that's just the first example. The second example comes a little bit more recently. Well, actually, I think it was during the same time, more or less. But anyway, it's highlighted in an article from a local news outlet called El Nuevo Dia. It's an article titled "Trump Attempts to Block Funds for Puerto Rico Again," and it's written by Jose A. Delgado Robles. Now, this is an interesting article. It's talking about something new that happened, and I'm going to go ahead and quote from it. As confirmation that President Donald Trump has ordered to stop disaster relief funds for Puerto Rico, the White House has challenged the Democratic proposal that seeks to grant the island $600 million in emergency nutrition assistance. End of quote. Emergency nutrition assistance. We're talking about money that goes to people so they can feed themselves. The administration, Trump's administration, is opposing this. Why exactly are they opposing this? The article talks about that as well. I'm going to go ahead and quote again. On Wednesday, while the Democratic-controlled House passed a Supplemental Appropriations Act to mitigate the damage caused by natural disasters, the OMB sent a statement to Congress explaining that the $600 million allocation in nutrition assistance was unnecessary and excessive. End of quote. So money for people to be able to feed themselves is unnecessary and excessive. We need to ask ourselves, would this be the same narrative if we were talking about people that weren't in Puerto Rico, but some segment of society or people that lived within one of the 50 states? We need to ask ourselves that question as we read on. I'm going to quote again. So far, the So far, the Senate Republican majority has ruled out considering the House disaster relief bill, backing Trump's demand for any measure intended to reopen the federal government, which is facing a historical partial shutdown since December 22nd, to include funds for the border wall. End of quote. So there's the motive. So the Trump administration is using the $600 million that are going to be intended for people in Puerto Rico to be able to feed themselves as a playing chip in this push and pull that the administration has. And we're going to go ahead and read one more time from the article, the following, and I quote: according to Professor Hector Cordero Guzman, a beneficiary on the island receives an average of about $135 per month. $135 per month. And he's talking about beneficiaries from this nutritional assistance program. So we're not talking about people getting rich. We're not talking about people receiving loads of money. These are people that just receive what's needed in order to buy what they need to survive, to subsist. We're talking about a situation where the President of the United States first tries to block Congress itself in appropriating money for disaster relief to Puerto Rico, and then that same president comes in and tries to block any effort in regards to Puerto Rico's ultimate development, which includes allowing people to receive a little bit more in order to buy a little bit more food. because what they receive currently, on average, is $135 per month. And these are the people in need. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a series of current events that basically highlight what we've always thought here in Puerto Rico Forward and the PRF Review, that we're dealing with a administration that looks at the Puerto Rico issue and not only does it ignore it, not only does it just set it aside and pretend it doesn't exist like other presidents and other administrations have done and other congressional bodies have done, both Republican and Democrat. But we're also seeing something a little bit more egregious. We're looking at something different. This administration is trying to prevent Puerto Rico from getting ahead. It's trying to prevent Puerto Rico from developing and to ultimately recover from a natural disaster. And that that's horrible. Well, that's going to be it for today's episode. As always, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Y que viva Puerto Rico.